You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, this is Kat Shamapande. Welcome to Let's Get Surety. I've got my co-host today, Mark McCallum, CEO of NASBP. Hey Mark.
Hi Kat. I am really excited because we have a wonderful guest back today.
I know. We've already had a talk in the past on a past episode with Jack Callahan, and he's a CPA partner and construction industry leader at CohnReznick. So we're excited to have Jack back on the podcast with us today. And we're going to be actually doing 2 episodes with Jack. This was such a big topic. We're going to be talking about the Paycheck Protection Program, which everyone's talking about. But our first episode, we're really going to talk about the updates and where that is now. And then in our next episode, we'll be taking a look at what that really means for bonding and bonding companies. So Jack, let's get started. Let's talk about the changes of what's changed. I mean, I know it's all changing every day, right?
Thanks, Kat and Mark. I really appreciate this opportunity to get a chance to talk with you and your members. And it does. It's been a constant everyday change. And as I said, at 11 o'clock last night, I got an email that there was a new update specifically pointing out to how to treat labor for offshore commercial fishermen. So I'm sure that's very relevant to all of our members here on this call. So probably won't go into that in depth, but that gives you a sense of what's happening here. The lobbyists are getting their hands on this. People are pushing for their own little tweaks and incentives. And so, as we always do, kind of give you that disclaimer caveat is that what we're giving you is the information best available as of this Friday afternoon and June the 26th. And by the time you listen to it and hear it, there may have been some updates, but we'll continue and make ourselves available through the NASBP as a resource should there be questions or follow-up that anyone has specific to what we're presenting here today.
Hey, Jack, do you think some of the changes are a result of it's really dawning on all of us that this COVID crisis is probably going to be a little bit longer than originally thought, and that they're trying to figure this out for their business and then how to apply the rules for the program?
That's exactly the case, Mark. I mean, there was this rush to shut down businesses, to go through the quarantining. And at the time, if you can all flash back to where we were right around St. Patrick's Day, we were told 2 weeks, go home, stay home. And then, this thing should pass 14 days of self-quarantining. And as we know now, we're sitting here in June, it's gone 3 months and we still don't know what the answer is. So the formulas that were based, and this was really, think about the courage to pass something like this. Billions of dollars were appropriated. Billions of dollars have been distributed by way of these paycheck protection programs to keep people from laying employees off. We've seen the massive unemployment rolls. There's been a tremendous amount of unemployment, but a number of companies have been able to retain their employees and keep them on the payroll because of the benefits that have accrued to them as a result of this paycheck protection program. But the economic reality was that, and continues to be, that the people have not been able to bring all their employees back. You can only do so much paying people to stay home. And quite honestly, with the incentives under the Unemployment Act, with the additional $600 compensation numbers, people are making more money staying home on unemployment. It equates right now with the bonus to over $52,000 a year is the pay that people are getting to stay home. And sadly, when you get unemployment, they withhold, unless you ask for it, they withhold no federal withholding taxes rather. And so people think that's all their money to spend. They'll have a rude awakening come a year from now. So Congress, the White House, the Senate have all figured out that, 8 weeks was just not enough time to spend the money. People haven't been able to put folks back to work quickly enough. And so they have now, through this Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act, they really have made it much more flexible and much more responsive to the true economic realities that we're all facing on a day-to-day basis here.
So I guess they changed the covered period. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was 8 weeks. So we had clients that, April the 3rd was the date that the programs opened up. We had folks that rushed to get their applications in and got loans quickly after that, around April the 10th. And those companies were quickly facing their 8-week period. and they had not had a chance to spend all of the money under the program. They had not gotten their labor dollars up, and the other approved expenses were not fully utilized. What they've now done is they've extended that period to 24 weeks, or through basically take most companies through December. And through December 31st would be the end of the program. It has not extended the deadline to apply. So if any of your agencies out there are looking to take advantage of this program, you've only got very limited. I would say Monday might be the last day for them to get their application in and try and get this funded, because the program dollars have to be funded by June 30th. But they will now have through December 31st effectively to utilize the funds for a 24-week period.
So, Jack, does it matter the particular business's payroll schedule in terms of the covered period? Like, for example, if you're a firm that pays weekly versus a firm that pays monthly, what does that mean under this program?
That's where the Flexibility Act has really been responsive. They've taken away a lot of the hard lines, and they pretty much, in its clearest form, they said, we want 8 weeks worth of payroll to be in there. So if you pay monthly, then you know what, we want 2 months worth in there. If you pay biweekly, we want 4 biweekly periods. If you're paying weekly, we want 8. And now with the extension to 24 weeks, it's the same. We want 24 weeks payroll in there. And however you make your pay, don't exert yourself. Don't go crazy with a cutoff. Use the last pay period. So get those 8 weeks now. Go get those 24 weeks of pay in. And so if you're cut off, if you got funded on a Monday, but your cutoff is on a Friday, just use the next available payroll period as the end of your period. So pretty much count the days, get those 8 weeks in there now, get the 24 weeks in there, and use that. So don't worry about doing cutoff periods between mid-period pay periods. So run your now 24 consecutive payroll periods, or, as I said, if it's a biweekly, so it'd be 12 consecutive payroll periods. And that would be what's going to be available to you and allowable under this formula.
Wow.
Well, and I know the ratios were a big part of this. Did those change as well?
They did, again, in recognition of some of the real realities of what was going on. Think about the retailers, think about the restaurants that were not able to open, and they still haven't been able to open effectively or fully. The ability to only utilize 25% of the dollars for non-payroll related expenses was a real restriction on their ability to effectively utilize these funds. So what the Flexibility Act has now done is they've dropped that number from 75% to 60%. So now 60% has to be payroll related expenses, and 40% can be non-payroll related. So again, we think that given the way the formula was set and given the realities for our contractor clients, it's not going to be a problem. We think our contractors are almost going to be able to use 100% for labor, because most were deemed to be essential services. Most of the construction backlog continued to work and move forward. But again, let's say for one of your agencies that filed for this and wasn't able to bring everyone back, they can use it now, only have to use 60% for payroll, and the other 40% they can use for their occupancy costs, their labor, rather their rent expenses, their utility expenses, and other approved and allowable expenses under the plan. So it's become, again, much more reactive and realistic to the economic realities today. When it first passed, again, there was a cliff in there. It said if you didn't use 60, none of it was going to be allowable. And they immediately came back and they softened that. So now it's still, if you don't hit the 60, you'll be able to prorate and use that portion that you are able to use. So again, everything about this has been very responsive. It's been very reactive, and for the most part, it's been very user friendly.
Does the program differentiate between employee payroll costs and then amounts paid to, let's say, an owner employee or a general partner?
There are, and there are built-in factors that payroll was capped at $100,000 per year. So it was $1,920 a week effectively was the payroll that was going to be allowable. And that was allowable for those 8-week, now 24-week period. When they came back and with the revisions, they did not go to the full 24 weeks for owners. or partners in a general partnership. So that is a slightly reduced amount that they're going to be allowed for. I don't have to right in front of my hand, my fingertips, the exact numbers, but there will be some allocations there. And then there are also the ability for the deduction of expenses on top of the $100,000. So your iron worker employee foreman, if she's earning over $100,000 a week, you still got up to the $100,000 amount, the weekly pay amount. And then you got to take all of her benefits, her health care, her hospitalization, all of those things were an additional expense. And inside, when you're now dealing with an owner-operator, when you're now dealing with a general partner, there were limitations on the amount of those expenses. So again, at the 8-week period, it was going to be very difficult. You were going to run into some restrictions on that. As we've now extended out to the 24 weeks, we think that the negative impact of that and some of the restrictions on that should be substantially relieved.
And also, didn't they try to make the applications a little bit easier? Am I recalling that correctly, Jack, as one of the new things that they're doing?
Well, the applications were the same. What they've done is the applications for forgiveness is what has been simplified. So the applications to get into the program and to get the money has remained the same. That SBA form is the same, and it still took a little bit of time and effort, but pretty much everyone that we know got through it, was able to get it done. But they've now finally come out with applications for the forgiveness, and they have come out with a simplified form, a long form and a simplified form. So basically it'll be the 3508 EZ form is the new forgiveness calculation form. And if you've not had to reduce your headcounts, you haven't had any full-time equivalents. That's a word you're going to hear thrown out a lot inside this program is full-time equivalents and the calculations of those. But again, it gets complicated. I don't want to go into all the details of it, but you had 2 marked periods before the pandemic hit. It was a period in 2020 or a period in 2019. You took that 8-week period and you figured out what your full-time equivalent count was in that period. And now they want you to take the lower of those 2 headcount totals and then compare that to the amount of the headcount during the 8 weeks, now 24 weeks that you're going to utilize the funds in. And if you were able to keep your headcount consistent and the same or increase it and not have any reductions, and you did not reduce the payroll of any of your employees by more than 25%, you effectively would get 100% of the amount that you had available. We would be able to use all of that for forgiveness, and you would be able to avail yourself of the EZ form. And so it's fairly, it is true to its word. It's an easy form to fill out. You put in the amount of your loan. You subtract out any of your, if you filed for any of the EIDL loans, which was SBA small business loans, you take those amounts out of there. And then you go back through your formula of how much did you have in allowable payroll deductions and non-payroll deductions, and did you have any limitations? Since under this formula you'd have no limitations on the percentage, you'd calculate the amount that was forgivable and submit for the forgiveness of that amount, and then anything non-forgivable would convert into a note. And the beauty on those notes is that those notes were 2-year notes at 1%. With 6 months of no interest forgiveness. They extended that to 9 months of interest free on those loans, and they've extended the ability to new loans issued after June 4th. We're going to have a 5-year maturity on them, and then the existing loans that were 2 years, you could go back and they were giving the banks the ability to renegotiate with you and extend the terms of those loans out to 5 years as well. So again, true to its word, flexible. Flexibility Act was truly flexible.
Well, have they provided any further guidance on the reductions in loan forgiveness? Has that changed in scope at all?
Again, they continue to clarify what are the allowable deductions. They continue to clarify, those things that are forgivable. And for the most part, it's consistent. Hasn't been a lot of real changes. So they've gone through, like I said, the cutoff period. So for your payroll, that you don't have to go crazy with a cutoff. You can stick to get 8 weeks in under the period. Right. They have made it a little bit easier that if you had rents that were accrued and accruing, you could pay them, on the normal rental due dates and include them in the formula. So, there was some clarification on the transportation costs, what was going to be allowable under there. And as I said, what we're excited about, though, is that, we thought that any of those interpretations that were going to be required would be areas for subject to audit at a later point in time. And we think with the extension of this program and the extension to 24 weeks, we're hoping that most of our clients is going to be all payroll, and therefore it's going to be a lot easier for us to do the calculations and to make the application for forgiveness.
Wow.
Yeah. Jack, I know we've talked about with you in the past, but documentation is very important when it comes to the PPP loans. Has there been more guidance or more information about what needs to be documented and how?
There's specific guidance inside the application, the forgiveness application, on what's to be provided with your forgiveness application. And so that you're going to have to give them copies of the bills or evidence of the canceled checks to indicate the payments that you made under the plan. And you are going to have to provide your payroll tax returns to support the amount that you have in there. And then they give you a whole list of the additional documentation that you will not have to submit, but you're going to have to make sure that you have available for you on the back end, should this come under audit. Kat, it's interesting when you think about that. Just today's Wall Street Journal had an article about how these were rushed out and that these are going to be fraught with fraud, the way that the money was distributed, the lack of oversight and control,
right.
Looking at tremendous opportunity for fraud in these these loans. And so, there's going to be, people are going to be looking at this. There was discussion that the fact that the information has been published, construction was first round of the financing. Construction was number one borrowers under this plan. They've now dropped down to the third largest borrowing group, but they're still the third largest borrowing group. It's some 12, 13% of the total loans distributed were to construction companies. So there are 6 years under statute, as this is written, for the services to come back and audit. And we still continue to see every day claims being made for Hurricane Katrina, casualty losses that were spent and claims coming back. And that's 9 years ago now, 10 years ago now. So the federal government ceases to have no time limits of when they want to come back and audit these things. So we're telling all of our clients to go through and document the heck out of their forgiveness, and to document the heck out of their economic needs. It's one of the things. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was agreeing.
One of the things early on was the whole issue of economic need. When the original loans came out, it was just that you had to show an economic impact. And certainly this pandemic affected every business in some form or fashion. And then it became an issue about being able to evidence economic necessity. And they kind of had a scare factor there and said, if you don't have economic necessity, give the money back and no harm, no foul. We'll close the books on your loan. We cautioned everybody to take a look at what the real economic impact is going to be on this. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily short term. It's going to be of a longer term nature. And so, I sent around to my clients this morning, the New York Metropolitan Transit Association just put a hold on their $55 billion capital program because their ridership is dropped by 85%.
Wow.
And so, what does that mean for us today? What does that mean for us tomorrow? Well, some of my clients, it severely impacts. And I don't think we've seen but the surface scratched on those types of long-term impacts.
Yeah.
The architects and engineers starts are at an all-time low in the last 3 months. We've got, companies that track, I think, certainly your surety. How many surety bond submissions have come in the last 3 months? So your own industry can get some pretty good dynamic statistics to show them what the impact is going to be. When you dry up 3 months, 4 months, 6 months worth of no bidding activity, we know that that's going to have a severe economic impact at some point in time down the road.
Has there also been any more guidance around payroll taxes in regard to the PPP?
There have, again, I think it gets clear every time we look at it. We're going to be able to deduct the payroll taxes. There was some bad information out in some of the early literature, so payroll taxes are clearly allowable on top of the $100,000 payrolls. You'll be able to take those. You will not be able to take the Social Security taxes, the FICA employer portion that will not be allowed under the program, but your other payroll taxes would. But the good clarification, again, that came out of the Flexibility Act was there was provisions in the CARES Act that said that employers could withhold the 6.2% FICA tax for a period of 2 years and not pay it in. However, if you applied for and received funds under the PPP program, you were precluded from taking advantage of that deferral. And in this Flexibility Act, they dropped that provision. So now all companies can take advantage of this deferral. And the way that works is, so when and now we're coming up on it, you've got your June 30th will be the first really full quarter that we kind of all knew what we were dealing with here under this plan. So if you take that 6.2% and you can calculate that pretty much straightforward from your 941 return, you can withhold and not pay that amount of money now. And the way the plan is set up, you accumulate those dollars and you pay it back without interest. One half of the amount that you withhold between now and the end of the year, you would pay back half of that withholding amount at December 31st, 2021, and the balance at December 31st, 2022. So effectively a year and a half average deferral of the 6.2 payroll taxes to the FICA matching that the company has. So again, with some of our larger employers, some of our larger contractors, that could be a tremendous deferral. And so, we'll talk more. There's so much here to talk about. We'll get into more details in the next session, but some of the ideas of what you as sureties are going to look at on your contractors' financial statements. We're going to see a tremendous growth of debt on balance sheets that, many cases had no debt before. And you're going to see some of these large deferrals and some of these large liabilities that are going to be parked out there on the balance sheets. And, the key is going to be understanding really where the cash flow went and hopefully making sure that your clients are the ones who took full advantage of this and used it effectively and used smart use of the funds.
Hey, Jack, is there anything else that you wish they would come out with guidance or clarity on the PPP program?
I think that's what you saw last night with the commercial fishermen. There's a lot of folks that still don't fit under the guise of normal, W-2 withholding salaries. There's some of these independent contractors. There's some of these owner operators, and I still think that some of the literature to date is still a little bit confusing, and I do feel very much for that small owner operator that's had to shut down his business or is working very hard to try and work on a very limited, backlog of work and make sure that those folks can get full advantage of what this plan is offering to some of the larger, contractors and the larger companies that are out there. So that's one of the areas where I think, again, you saw that again, we got some pushback and they made some clarification and made it easier for these fishermen, for the fishermen, but I just, again, every time I see that, I worry about the other shoe falling when the Department of Labor comes in and deems, oh, you declared these people as being eligible for this plan, and are they really independent contractors or not? So I think we've got a pretty good handle on it now. And one of the things that was good is, as it was originally written, there was it was an election of the 8 weeks or the 24 weeks. So I was very concerned that if you didn't elect the 8 weeks, you were going to have to wait until the 24 weeks were out or almost to the end of the year. And now they've clarified that, and they've said that, you can elect basically a 10-week or a 12-week period. Once you've utilized the full and you're eligible for the full forgiveness under the plan, you can strike your formulas, you can do your calculations on your full-time equivalents, and you can make the submission at a shorter period of time rather than waiting for the full 24 weeks. So that, I think, is really potentially going to help us when we look at the long-term impacts here on the financial statements and be able to get some of the debt off the books and recognize some of these loan forgivenesses. And also, I think it's going to allow us to clear up some of the concerns that I have on what the crystal ball is going to be. Where are our full-time equivalents going to be at December? Being from the Jersey Shore here, I said, people ask me, well, what do you think? And I said, well, we'd have to go ask Madame Marie down at the Asbury Park Boardwalk on what she thinks December is going to look like. But I am concerned that our clients could have, who knows if there's going to be an expansion, another go around, or if some of this work really does temporarily dry up. We have an election that's going to create havoc and chaos between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I see a chance for the full-time equivalents to potentially be a challenge at the December 31st. So I think that by being able to take these, to draw a line at week 10, 12, 14, while you still have full-time equivalency at steady pace is going to be a real advantage to our clients. And now to that, they've put some literature in that makes it a little easier, that if you haven't been able to bring people back because of pandemic-related issues, which again is going to be everybody's business, that those will not be held against you. But again, that's so nebulous and so hard to draw a hard line on. I'd love to get our clients to a point where full head count is up, they're back, they're working fully, and draw the line at that date when that works. And even if you leave a little bit of money on the table, apply for the forgiveness at that point in time to fix in the forgiveness of this loan.
Well, great. Well, Jack, are you going to pull out your crystal ball for part 2 to tell us a little bit more about what you think it means for bonding companies?
I will do that, and I'll go down. I'll take some time this weekend. I'll socially distance with Madame Marie, and we'll get some of her insights and get some thoughts. And then, yes, that's what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about what I see based on the trends I'm seeing right now, and what I'm hoping for and hoping against. For what we'll look at on the 6-month interim statements, what the year-end statements will look like, and kind of a little bit of knee-jerk on what we think the reactions are going to be, so that our clients and we're trying to get the message out for our clients to be prepared, and we want all of your folks from the surety side, because as I always tell people, the more informed everybody is, the more open the dialogue is, the more effective it is for all of us to weather the storm together, to extend, to get good credit, and to work with the right partners. And surprises aren't good for anybody. So there are going to be plenty of surprises, but the more open we are and the more honest we are in the dialogue between now and the time that these things happen, or when these things happen, the better off everybody's going to be.
Perfect. Sounds like a don't miss episode for part 2.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jack, for joining us and really talking us through where the changes with the Paycheck Protection Program are today when we're recording on June 26, 2020. And I'm looking forward to episode 2 when we get to talk about what it means for bonding.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.